Okay. I think we're coming through loud and clear for everyone out there. How's it going, sir?
It's going well. How's it going with you, Script?
Yeah, we violent weather. Because in Canada where I am, we're in the spring and name only season. So we had like 20-degree weather earlier this week. Then we had an ice storm, and then mild 15-degree weather today. A little bit of rain. so we're So yeah, it's an adjustment, something that not a whole lot of us always get used to. But other than that, pretty good. Glad to have you back with us, especially for tonight's script. It's an interesting one
Yeah, it's a fun little romantic comedy script.
of
You
sorts.
imagine.
Yeah, yeah. So with that,
More, yeah, dramedy, I guess, would be the better
yes.
description.
So with that being said, let's jump right into it. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Lil Chad from the Ascendant Art podcast. Glad to have you back, sir. We've got we've got like a dramedy type of thing,
Hmm.
a type of tone of script that you don't see too often. Tonight we're reviewing Bridgehampton, which came in 60th place with 10 votes, and it's written by Jeremy Leder. Uh, Chad, share with us the log line for Bridgehampton, please.
Sure. Recently dumped Ezra Green accidentally brings a terminally ill woman home to Bridgehampton for a long weekend with his eccentric family. Don't judge. He needs to cope with his estranged father who just got out of white-collar prison.
Yes, the synopsis for Bridgehampton is dumped Ezra meets Harper days before he's due at his mom's Hampton home to mark his dad's prison release. It's no joyful reunion. Ezra's shunned his father for 2 years, sister Stella and Brooks dodge their failing marriage, and Harper's terminal illness stuns them all. Chaos brews, and one shock could shatter everything, bracing for a gripping family clash. Um, as you can tell by that synopsis, it's a little offbeat, which is quite appropriate for this type of screenplay, which is a bit offbeat and yet still follows a lot of very familiar tropes. Um,
Hmm.
tell me about your first impressions, Lil Chada, of this script overall.
So, my first impressions of the script is that this is a couple story beats from being a Hallmark movie script.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple things that kind of make it a little more dramatic, specifically the Harper character, the terminally ill character that's referenced, and her how she's written. But aside from that, it's kind of like we have a meet cute. We have a like thrown into a tight, like an awkward situation very quickly. In a lot of ways, it's funny, even though it just came out. What was the one with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell from like
Oh, anyone but you. Yeah.
Anyone But You? It had some similar vibes to that with the like being thrown together.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in this case, there's a little more chemistry that is acknowledged between the male and female lead. But my first thought is that it's kind of like, just a throwback where it's a romantic comedy, but it's more drama. There's less comedy than you would want. Comedy would need to be punched up a lot if they wanted to sell it for that.
Yeah, because
That was my thought.
I would say its format in comedy is so dry that it can be very easily missed, and it's very cast dependent because it's got a very depressing opening, which when
Yeah,
you
it
take
does.
when you take a look at some of the other like romantic comedies or at least romance films of, well, I would say the mid to late '90s, that starts off with those depressive emo. Okay, the girlfriend's leaving the boyfriend type of thing. Like our main character Ezra, we are witnessing him kind of on the brink of tears as his long term girlfriend is literally moving out. Um, and
Yeah,
he,
it's almost like the what was it in Mallrats? Like you jump right in,
yeah,
and your initial scene is like the Shannon Doherty breaking up with Brody from in Mallrats. Except it's there's no it's not played for comedy.
yeah,
It's like
Ezra's
really
not
dark
Ezra's
and
not playing
hurtful.
Super NES hockey while this is happening, and
No, and it's hurtful too. Like some of the words, like this, that, like it is like, this is straight drama.
yeah,
Like this is a dramatic moment. There's no comedy.
there's no
I
comedy, but
would,
it has the tropes. So like you've got Ezra, who's supposed to be that type of, he's that good-hearted guy, but he's damaged, and normal women just can't process him. Then we're introduced to Stella, who is like a financier of sorts, and she's clearly the alpha in her marriage, and her husband Brooks is just there.
yeah, Stella looks like she's on testosterone from the off the page. Like
Yeah.
the way she's just, and that's actually how she's described a little bit. I mean, when we say that, I'll give credit. Like she's supposed to be written that way,
Hmm.
so they nailed it. She comes off as a ball busting, high T alpha female, a lot like in Sex in the City, the Kim Cattrall character,
Oh
where
yeah.
she's like, I'm head bitch in charge of everything.
Right.
Like I carry my husband around like a decorative purse. Yeah, it's like she, and she's married to Brooks, who is the way we're introduced to him is also as being a subservient, just taking it like from her. That the first interaction is just her dominating him and not him not even being able to like muster up the words to say anything about it.
Yeah, I would say like for this type of relationship, in order for it to work really well, like Stella has to be like one of the most beautiful women in the world. Like there has to be all something. It's not just her attitude, but also have to be her appearance that would make you realize, okay, I understand why a guy like Brooks would still be with her of sorts. And then I think that also pay off better towards the final act of the film.
Yeah, and that's where it's like this script is so casting dependent.
Yeah.
A lot like when we were talking pre-show, I think I mentioned, and I guess all scripts are technically cast dependent. You could have, Shakespeare, and we have seen things where people are given Shakespeare and they butcher it because they're just not good actors and can't handle it. But in this case, this is like what's on the page could go so either way based on casting and performance. And Stella is like the key like red flashing sign of that. Like if you cast the wrong person, she'll be so unlikable and so terrible that you're just never going to want to see her on screen regardless of the situation.
Oh, 100%. And you're also not going to believe her dynamic with her brother Ezra. Like that's the other part too. Like you have to there has to be some sort of give and take here because that's how they are. Like as soon as Ezra breaks up with Mel, Stella can tell that he's not doing well, and so they immediately she immediately takes him to this bar, which is like kind of their watering hole of sorts, where they go to, pretty regularly, and she's there just to try and give him support and also tell him some of the stuff he doesn't need to hear, like you just need a really good rebound just to kind of get yourself back to normal. And
Which,
it's
by the way,
yeah,
is a classic thing that your dude friend would tell you in a movie.
yes,
Like
not
this
not your
is
sister.
if you're yeah, if you're thinking back to like this is something where like when you're looking at something like The Breakup
Right.
with Vince Vaughn, like that's something where you'd have like John Favreau or someone like that like sitting at the bar with you being like, "Man, you just need to get laid. You need to go out there and you just need to do it, get it out of your system." And again, this is where casting is so important. You cast the wrong person with this woman where she's just looking at her brother and be like, you know what you really need is just a good rebound to just go and get laid by the first girl that you meet. It's like that's so like I don't know. It's definitely a male writer,
Yeah.
but I can tell you like women as a market, if this because this movie the way it's done would probably be primarily marketed towards the woman moviegoer to get the male date to take her to it.
No,
And
this is definitely not the type of script that would appeal to a group of guys that want to go to the
yeah,
movies. This is a
yeah.
date movie.
So you do that, and you gotta. So what came to mind is there was a movie called The Family Jewel with Rachel McAdams was the ball busting sister, and she was a good example of doing it right, where they cast someone who could play like aggressive tomboy kind of girl, and then still have vulnerability. Because they also, in the way that was written, they didn't push her like to be straight alpha the way this woman is.
Yeah.
So they might need to do a rewrite a pass to kind of soften her edges to make that, or to you got to really nail the casting where you find a freaking unicorn actress who can play that part well.
Yeah, because that's part of the trickier part, because when she starts off pretty strong. And one of the things, like, this script reads really, really fast, and the first 5 pages introduces you to your first 5 characters, like, right away. The writer, Jeremy Letter, he doesn't waste any time. A little bit of history from him is that he was a stand-up comedian in New York for a while, and I guess he works for an ad agency, and so this is his first or second, like, real script. He's pretty decent at getting character voices, at least off the bat, because he knows how to cut through a lot of the chaff that you don't need in a screenplay. One of the things that, as we started talking, that I liked is he doesn't use character descriptions in the typical way. He qualifies them with a specific choice that a character does that kind of informs you all of it. So, for instance, he describes, we'll get to, like, the mother. So Marcy is the mother of Stella and Brooks. She's in her 70s, and she's described as the person that tells everyone their outfit sucks. And you kind of get a whole lot of information from that one brief sentence. And with Stella, you find out that she's the type of woman who feels more comfortable in a power suit, and by that, that's boardroom type of power suits, not some sort of Iron Man thing. And then you have Harper, who is this other character who she's lost her ability to care. So we get introduced to her. She's buying art supplies, canvases and paints, and she's going through the subway, and she sees some guy, I guess, playing a violin, if I'm not mistaken, right? And
Yep.
And so we find out that in her purse, she has a stack of Post-it notes that has her phone number on it, and she just tears off a Post-it note and slaps it on anyone that gets her interest right away, whether they've actually said anything or not. Just they do an action, and she gives them the phone number and tells them to call her as she goes her way. And I liked this type of introduction because this is a bait and switch type of thing. Because you think, oh, she's just kind of a free spirit living in the moment, not caring about consequences, probably promiscuous, what have you. And we find out that there's kind of a reason for that, but it's not exactly that black and white. And she does this again because we follow her. It's the next morning. Ezra decides to go order a coffee, and it's this medium almond mocha latte with espresso, maple, cinnamon, and nutmeg and crap in it. And Harper thought it was such a ridiculous order, but still interested her into him, that she does the same thing. She gives him the Post note, says, text me with your address, and we'll have a fun night. And it's like the easiest thing for Ezra in this current state to have, like, just fall into his lap, almost literally. And he ends up doing it. And she comes over, she introduces herself, and then they have a night of passion. And this all happens, like, within the first 10 pages or so. And then what's quite humorous is that right after, in the following morning, Ezra says, hey, do you want to come with me to my parents' place in the Hamptons for the weekend? And it's like the very inappropriate thing to ask right away. Like, did you appreciate that type of quick jump to the next beat of sorts from this setup, or were you wondering, if it's a stretch or not.
It works as a movie move.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I'd never see it in real life and believe it, but in a movie context where there's kind of a heightened reality where you speed run things, I can sort of see it. I think it works better if they have punched up the comedy so that this kind of move works better in a comedy than it does in a drama.
It does. It also have worked better if we got maybe another scene before they went to bed.
Yeah, I would have liked, or even a scene after they bedded each other, where they maybe went to lunch
Yeah.
and he asked her, like, where they're having a good time, that you've seen the chemistry, and that it's something where the reason he's asking doesn't come off so much as desperate because he's wounded as much as he's got a little bit of spark with this girl and he's feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's six and one half dozen the other. I think you put the scene in either begin it before or after so that you make sure that there's enough. Because what we get before the bedding isn't enough to justify, like, because there's even the line in the script where, like, was the sex that good? Like, like, was it
Yeah.
really that good? Like, because it comes out of nowhere. So I would like, I agree with you. I think you pace it a little better. I think it would more naturally fit after than before. Where they, because in the like manic moment of the night before, they're just getting right. That's kind of how Harper's character is. And I would like a thing where we also get a moment where Harper kind of acknowledges, like maybe when they go to lunch, I don't usually do this.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing where you're seeing that she's breaking her normal protocols too with Ezra because they have some kind of chemistry.
Because the thing is, you want to have that glimmer of hope, but you also want to have that looming, um, that sort of Damocles over Ezra's head, because the situation is that this is the first woman he has met within 24 hours after breaking up with a long-term girlfriend. It's not. It might not go the way anyone wants or hopes, and if you set up these two characters to have such strong chemistry, if the script did that better, you would then have stakes to this because you're like, oh no, these two kind of are hitting it off, but he's on the rebound. Are his emotions in line with his hormones, so to speak, at this point? Because it's like this is the first girl that's giving him attention after he's been dumped. She's quirky. She's a little blunt, but she's got this type of weird positive attitude about things as well. And is this all like a too good to be true moment? Like, when's her dark side going to come out? Like, you have to entertain those ideas because you want the audience to kind of be on edge, a little bit excited and a little bit on edge, worried like, how is this going to fail? And I don't think that was well established because we get straight into the meat. He texts her to come over. There's barely a conversation. They go at it. And in that morning, while she's in the bathroom, like getting prepped for the day, he just drops his bonds like, you want to come with me for the weekend to the Hamptons on a family trip? It's like, rein it in there, buddy. You don't even know if she's got responsibilities for the weekend. Like, you're just assuming she'll say yes and that she can drop everything to do that. That's also kind of rude and inconsiderate. And this script had an opportunity to play with that, I think, for drama and also chemistry, but it really just kind of circumvents that just to kind of get these two to drive up to the Hamptons. And there's a lot of like delaying setups in the first act. Like, why are they going up to the Hamptons? Like, there's some sort of occasion. The mom wants all the kids there. We don't hear about the dad right away, and we're kind of just dwelling on the moments themselves without feeling like there's much of a setup going on, which kind of threw me for a bit. I don't know. Did that throw you at all, or am I alone here or there?
It was kind of like, again, we are speed running the setup
Yeah.
really fast. There's not a lot of room to breathe. I don't necessarily have a problem especially with Marcy's character, because on the page they give you a very succinct description of who she is, and throughout the rest of the script, as the character goes out, there's not actually. I think the speed running with her is more in line with who she is as a character than any of the others.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind it for some with Marcy specifically. I didn't have any issue with how it was done, especially with how you got her character laid out later. That she is 100% the exact kind of person who would just do something as fast as possible, like gets right to the point, skip all the chatter about it, and just, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, she's a character that values what time is, and as we quickly find out, well, not so quickly, but as we eventually find out, her husband Isaac has been in prison for 18 months for basically like financial fraud of sorts, and only a little bit of what he actually did was discovered and used as a conviction against him. Apparently, he did a lot more. And the funny thing for Marcy is that she genuinely misses her husband, and we learn that Isaac has used his finances to get a certain amenities in prison, one of which is a smartphone, and he's been requesting boob photos of his wife while he's been in prison these 18 months, and she's been doing it, which I conveyed a lot of information about their relationship and how it's not one of like transaction or convenience, but there's something more to it because of this type of attitude that they have. And remember, like, he's in his 70s, she's in her 70s. So this is a guy who's asking for a pair of 70-year-old breasts in photo form sent to him. That can only be love, in my opinion.
It's just a really quick way to actually kind of make you like the husband who's been in prison, because he's in prison.
Mm-hmm.
He's we find out that he was there for crimes that most people would not have any sympathy for.
100%.
But one of the ways you can make him sympathetic is to make someone wildly in love with their older spouse.
Yeah.
There's something, we are hardwired as people to find two things inherently endearing as long as you're not a sociopath. One is like toddlers and babies, and the other is like a very elderly couple still being like super in love.
Yes.
Like if you get a person who has any kind of heart, those two things are going to hit a nerve. Like when you see a couple celebrating like their 50th or 60th wedding anniversary, and the husband is like, "Isn't my wife beautiful? Isn't she the prettiest?" And all this kind of stuff. You're just like, "Oh, that's so sweet." You're gonna, in this case, it's a little more tawdry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's endearing, right? It's like, he's not asking for like a 22-year-old, like, because model from Playboy or something. He's like, I want to see my wife. She's the one I love.
Yeah, and
so it was like such a sweet little thing.
What also I thought was kind of endearing too is when he's being discharged from prison, he's getting his personal effects back. The officer behind the desk is like, "Oh yeah, that cell phone you snuck in, we're gonna need that." And Isaac says, "Okay, but give me a minute. I gotta delete all the photos of my wife's boobs off the phone." So he doesn't even want anyone seeing his wife's breast pics, boob pics and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's even another one. He's making sure that no one's going to take those and, distribute them on the internet or like revenge porn or anything of that nature. I'm like, okay, that's another point where I'm like, okay, I like this guy. I hate the fact that, he did kind of like a Bernie Madoff type of thing of sorts. But he shows love for his wife and also respect for her. Like it's like to the point where I'm reading the script at this point. I'm like, I'd rather just kind of see these two kind of more on the page than the younger characters, because there's something deeper going on with this couple. And because when we get back to like Harper and Ezra, it's they're not in a relationship really. They're going up to they're on the drive up there, and during this drive, this is where Ezra discovers that Harper is terminally ill, and she doesn't want to talk about it. She's here for the moment, and she has to reassure Ezra that she's going to make it beyond the weekend because she's not going to die up at the property. But outside of that, she's going to be okay. And Ezra's like, well, that's some news that I didn't expect going into this. And so now, I mean, I appreciate what the writer's trying to do here, because now he's basically saying, like, there's a ticking clock to this potential relationship. It's not going to last, to the end of both their lives. It's one is checking out, a lot earlier than the other. I think that reminds me a little bit of Sweet November, right? Charlize Theron, she was gonna die, and
Yeah, that was the one where she was gonna die. Was it Keanu Reeves? No.
Keanu Reeves, yeah.
Keanu Reeves. Yeah, in that one. And so she would date someone only for like a couple weeks at a time, and she had a rule about not getting too close. That's why that actually did come to mind when I was like, there's something where they should have where Harper's breaking her own rules about how she's doing this kind of thing. But yeah, because this is not a new thing in Hollywood. The terminally ill super unicorn girl that
like
is
a Walk to
everything
Remember
you've ever
and all that
wanted.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. Now it can hit harder than others. Like I know my wife absolutely gets destroyed by A Walk to Remember every time she watches it. But that goes back. She watched it when she was younger, so it stays with her. There's some movies where that kind of stuff, if you watch it when you're more susceptible as a younger person, it anchors. I watch it, I'm like, that's nice. It was good. And but on the other hand, she has no reaction to Field of Dreams, and that wrecks me. So as a male.
Yeah.
But so this is the kind of thing where this girl, again, this is all about casting, because Harper is the key to this whole movie, because she's, as people who probably haven't even read the script like we have, but from what we're putting down, she's going to be the one who unlocks the entire family dynamic. Like that's the magic of this kind of movie, right? You introduce the outlier, the variable to the family dynamic, and they're the ones who end up over the course of the weekend. And it's not just like a girl sometimes. And it's not just in dramas. You can do it in comedies. Like you do a movie like Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore. It's the same concept.
Right.
Stranger variable introduced to family dynamic shakes things up over the course of a holiday. This is not a new genre. It's actually, I think it probably should have its own genre where it's like stranger, as a hand
Well, it's like the Guess Who's Coming to
family.
Dinner thing. Yeah, it's
Yep.
pretty much. And yeah, like they're the person who their attitude and behavior is so strong that there's no sense of being courteous to the people around them. It's just like, I'm just going to be me for the sake of me, and everybody else has to deal with it. And there's ways where you can do that obnoxiously. There's ways where you can do that politely. And Harper is kind of like, she's more onto the polite side of things, because she's just there to kind of embrace the experience, because she knows she has limited time. Like her whole lost her ability to care about things is predicated on the fact that she's been told that she's only got so many months left to live, and so she is going to try and have as much fun and embrace as much experience as she possibly can with her limited time left. And that's one of the reasons why she was so quick to agree to go on this trip, is the fact that, well, she's never been invited to things like this before, or if she has, has been too long of a while, and she might as well take advantage of it. And then the other part too is that she has this philosophy where, even though she's been given so many months to live, she hopes that whatever her illness is takes her out 30 days earlier. That way she's not spending the last 30 days like, depressed and worried about going out.
I actually kind of appreciated that concept.
Yeah, I thought that's a
as soon
clever
as
one
she
too.
expressed it, I was like, that kind of gets me. If I got 6 months to live, when I'm in that last month, it's just going to be like, is death coming for me this minute?
Yeah.
Whereas like month 5, I'm like, well, I still got a whole month. Doctor said so.
And then you
So
never know. Like that's the other part too. If it happens, you don't know. Or maybe you find out far more with a lot less stress going into whatever is beyond this mortal plane. So like that's also one of the other things is like we have Harper. She's an interesting character that kind of keeps us a little interested in the story. But on the other side of things, it's a lot of a hurry up and wait type of thing because we've got like 40 pages before Isaac shows up. And when he does, this is where we get into the next stage of the conflict where Ezra is very upset with his father. They're not he's not talking to Isaac, and Isaac is trying to reach out to him. And there's a history going on there. We find out that Ezra used to work for his father at his finance firm, and now he doesn't anymore.
yeah,
And
effectively,
yeah,
I think in order to kind of set it, I mean, his dad is kind of like a Bernie Madoff light,
yeah,
he was serving time in jail for having ripped off the investors into his investment firm. And which is weird because here's the thing, when we meet Ezra, he was working at like an ad agency, and it's those skill sets don't generally overlap.
no,
He was supposedly working with his dad at a high end level, as an investment banker of some sort. Investment bankers aren't known for doing like mock-ups for marketing campaigns. It's just not done.
no. The only way I can see that being the case is if this was a startup and the guy just wanted him in there to be like, well, you got a good eye for investments, so maybe you can help me get, take that eye and use it for marketing because every marketing account is a form of investment. And I'm like, because I've met people like that in startups who
Yeah,
they're just
the
looking
only
for
other
anything,
factor
any
that
reach.
should have been, that could have been, his name is going to be nuclear.
Yes, it's
Like
toxic.
we're supposed to believe that his dad was so famous for being. This is where things get contradictory.
Hmm.
His dad is so famous for being a rip-off investor that he's on the news, he's getting doxxed, like him being released from jail is a big story. People are protesting and yelling at him everywhere. But Harper didn't know who he was or have the backstory.
Right, like she didn't, it didn't click with her. Um,
I'm
and
going to
then
assume she must have at least learned the last name and kind of had. Anyway.
yeah, I mean, I will say there was an attempt at a joke that really didn't land, and that was with the fan mail.
Yes, that was.
Like,
I mean, even serial killers get romance letters.
get fan mail, and then of course Isaac's opening them up, and they're all like, we hate you, we're gonna kill you, you ruined our lives. And I mean, the thing is that it's not funny because you already know what the actual outcome is going to be. The way this scene would have been funny is if they were actual like dude, you pulled off the biggest scam in the world. My tip of the hat to you. Like that would be funny. Because if it was legitimately fan mail. Because then you're like, what type of people would laud this type of guy who's destroyed, so many lives, and yet he's reading these fan mails that should make Isaac feel more guilty about what he did because he's like, my God, there's a lot of evil people out there. And then if I were to write that scene, I'd put in one final thing where he opens up a letter and it's like, yeah, you destroyed my family. I'm coming to get you. And he's like, see, here's a normal guy who wrote me a letter. Like, just that type of thing. Because you have to do the compare and contrast for it. And this one here was like, no, like it's just Marcy. She's so in love with her husband. She got collected all this mail that's addressed to her husband, thinking it's like fan mail, but no, it's the exact opposite. Like we already know, like the audience is already ahead of you on that. You gotta think, okay, well, what would the audience not expect? What if it was legitimately fun, like praise for this guy's doing it? And what if you threw in a couple of funny names of notable, questionable people in the zeitgeist of the world to said, hey, yeah, you did really great doing with that scheme. Only 18 months, man. I can't wait for my sentence to only be 18 months. I'm, that type of stuff. It wasn't it wasn't here. It was actually just kind of deflating it. But the other part too is that this is also another setup because it goes back into the fact that their Hampton home has been doxxed and their high luxury apartment in New York has also been doxxed.
Hmm.
And Isaac's not too worried about it. But one of the things that's kind of fascinating is that anytime there's a conflict that arises around the family from a third party, the first instinct Isaac has is he stands in front of his wife to protect her.
Hmm.
That happens when they go out for ice cream. That happens when they're on the on the trail, and that happens when they're out at a vineyard. And I'm like, okay, yeah, they're doing a lot. Like this writer knows how to show a guy that cares about, the woman he loves and the mother of his children. And it just kept on going back to that things like I'd rather see this be a movie about these two because as soon as Isaac comes home, they do their dinner, then they go to bed, and in the morning, Marcy's telling her kids, "Yeah, that trip that you guys are going on, your father and I, we can't make it." And Stella gets upset. She says, "Well, why can you not make it?" And she's like, "Well, I'm going to pork your father." And I'm like, "That's a funny joke," but Stella, of course, reacts to it as any child should. She's like, "Don't tell me what you guys are going to do." And Marcy's argument is like, "You asked why, not if you didn't ask why, I wouldn't have told you." And so, yeah, the kids go out and Isaac is like, okay, so to the bedroom. She's like, no, outside. And I'm like, okay, this is why they're more interesting because it's basically like pent up sexual frustration and they want to release it in the most exotic way they can on their property. And then after they're done, she's just like, you got one chance to increase our pillow talk so that I don't want to like so I still want to hang out with you for the rest of the day. And he's like, you want to get ice cream? She's like, bingo, that's it. And there's a jovial attitude to it, which I really appreciated because it made them as a couple interesting. And I wasn't getting that level of interest here because between Harper and Isaac, it was a lot of dancing around exposition.
Yeah, I think the we with was it Ezra, right? Not Ezra,
Yeah.
with Ezra. So we've got Ezra and Harper, where Harper's trying to figure out what was the backstory with him and his dad, whereas Marcy and Isaac, and this is the weird thing though too, because we're only it's a weird kind of thing to humanize the Bernie Madoff kind of character, right?
Yeah.
We realize we from the fan mail we know he did horrible things. These like regular investment bankers aren't getting these letters.
No.
Like you must have done something to genuinely wrong a bunch of people. But then you get the juxtaposition of how much he does genuinely love his wife, which is sweet and endearing. And I do think that you're right. It does make it the most interesting because characters with that kind of dichotomy, they do exist in the real world
Yeah.
where they can do one thing that's so utterly reprehensible, but they have these other traits that are genuinely good and admirable. And what do you make of that? Well, we don't get a lot of time at all to deal with kind of unpacking that. There's because they are such side characters within the movie. I mean, the A storyline is Ezra and Harper. The B storyline is Stella and Brooks,
Which is also very boring.
which is super boring. If anything, I would have liked to just you could have made Stella and Brooks like just paper thin generic family
Hmm.
and put them in there and to expand the Marcy and Isaac. I think the story comes off better if you kind of juxtapose Ezra and Harper's thing where Harper's terminally ill, they have no future, and kind of but they are genuinely kind of attracted to each other, have chemistry and all that, and they're in a virgining, a burgeoning burgeoning relationship. Whereas you've got Marcy and Isaac on the other end, they're at the tail end of their relationship.
Hmm.
They love each other to their core. They can't even, they're in their 70s and they can't keep their hands off each other. But he's also not he's not a very redeeming kind of character. And how they're navigating that part of the relationship, like, was he doing that to keep Marcy in the lifestyle that she had become accustomed? Does she have any guilt about that? Like those are all things that are kind of worth unpacking. You
Hmm.
know, like is because would there be guilt? Like she's maybe like a later stage trophy wife, so to speak, but maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was really helping him out in his early years and then just became like the mom and stayed home.
Yeah.
And because they had to keep sending their kids to equestrian camps and keep up with the Joneses on the Hamptons, the pressure got to Isaac, so he started doing things, to take money from people to keep financing that. It'd be interesting if she had guilt, if she was aware of it. Like, did she not know? Is there conflict now that he's getting out of jail? And maybe she's like, I can't believe you did that. And he's like, you knew exactly what I was doing. Like,
Hmm.
that would be a little more Sopranos like, right? Where
Yeah.
you're getting into whether Edie Falco, knew, and she did, exactly what Tony was up to. Like, and when she would start getting skeevy about it, he would call her out on it. Like, where do you think your car comes from? Where do you think that Range Rover you love so much comes from? You don't ask questions when it's stuff for you.
Yeah.
So, but this isn't. If they went more drama, that would be a really interesting thing to look at.
It would be. One of the things I noticed that I wasn't expecting is that this is a very comfortable, financially comfortable family. And Marcy is still cooking for her family. Like she's putting stuff in the pot. She's putting lobster tails and crab legs, and she's making a broil. And she doesn't have someone to hire to cook for her or the family. Now I don't know if that has to do with the fact that there's no one she could trust to not poison her food because of what her husband did, or if that is something that she does regularly. But I will say, like the kids didn't even bat an eye when she was setting out dinner, and I think that's kind of shows their dynamic is that they're they're rich, but they're not lavish, I guess would be the best thing to say, or at least between these two, because yeah, like Stella is got elaborate clothes and she likes to drink a lot, even if it's 10 in the morning, and she's got this authority sense to her, like she's got to live up to some sort of standard that no one has really set for her except for herself. And then Ezra, he's he's working at an ad company, and part of me thinks he's only doing it just to occupy his time because he's got like a trust or something that he's living off of. And and it feels like the kids are the generation that's more lavish, more posh to a degree, and then the parents themselves are, even though they're in nice beautiful homes, they're still take care of each other, so to speak. And I thought that was kind of interesting because when they're hanging up the banner to welcome back the father, they don't have a professional crew doing it. Marcy is bickering at her son-in-law Brooks, saying like it needs to be further to the left, no, now to the right, no, just adjust it. Like there's no construction crew that she's pestering family. and
Hmm.
and I'm like, this is a very strange dynamic because you wouldn't get that in other films, like especially in the early '80s where you had rom-coms or dramedies about the eccentric rich family. There would always be those helpers that are either being treated politely, but the helpers are kind of like have a tongue-in-cheek response to their employers. You have the mother or the aunt or the grandmother eccentrically demanding things and saying inappropriate stuff all the time to the help. There's no help in this movie. It's all being done by them. The closest thing to a help is like Jeff, the Uber driver, who gets told, Ezra's the history of Ezra's previous relationship off camera while he's bumped into his ex-girlfriend at this vineyard, where she's trying to take back her dumping of him, and he decides to not accept it and then just go with Harper back home. Um, it was supposed to be built up like a comedic and a bit of a tension, but it just felt flat for me
Yeah,
because
so we get this is the conflict with Ezra and Harper's, that with Stella snooping.
mhm.
She discovers her pills, which were it's interesting because it looks like they were, like she went through her bag sort of to see them. Then she looks up what they were on Google and determines that it's for end of life care.
Yeah.
And so then, the cat's out of the bag because Harper didn't want to be known as I'm just the dying girl you brought home. Like, because I
Y-
guess that would be awkward.
Yeah, because I mean, I think Harper's looking at it as like this is going to be a thing for maybe a week or two, and then I'm moving on to the next part. And if that information is shared, then you've built a bridge to something a lot stronger than what was intended to begin with in the first place, because now you've got empathy factoring in on another level towards her and her relationship with Ezra that she wasn't looking for. And one of the subtleties of this story is that we know these two are going to fall in love. Um, the script is not trying to hide that in any way. They are
Hmm.
trying to deter it a little bit, but it's not working because the writer is deliberately making these two kind of hit it off with their conflicting points of views, but their innate attraction to each other. Um, and and I would say, like to your point earlier, this script really does depend on getting the right cast. And we were talking before the show. When I was reading it, the first name that popped into my mind from Marcy was Jane Fonda, because
Hmm.
this leans into the type of attitude. She's an elderly woman who still is relatively attractive, like she's aged quite well, and she's got like a chip, or a sternness to her, a no nonsense about her. At least she knows how to deliver those types of roles really well. That I think would fit nicely in this. And then opposite her, you mentioned J.K. Simmons, which I think is a good choice. I also found like Liam Neeson would be a good choice as well, just to get him kind of more into traditional drama roles again, because he's done a ton of action movies for the last 25 years.
Yeah, I would say one of the in terms of the actresses for Marcy, I could see somebody like Susan Sarandon popping into that role.
Mm-hmm.
I could see a you know maybe a Diane Keaton, not so much, but she's a little less. You want someone who can kind of pull off the kind of like the short and no nonsense. Diane Keaton wouldn't be to do that kind of thing, but Susan Sarandon definitely could.
Oh yeah,
And because she has kind of that vibe. I could even say the other person I could see doing it would be Sigourney Weaver,
oh
who's
yeah,
a little older now. She would kind of also fit that same mold where she's still, for her age, pretty attractive,
mm-hmm.
and but also because it would be almost like channeling the character she played in Working Girl,
Yeah.
where she's no nonsense, just like straight to the point kind of thing, but kind of, but does it with the smile on her face.
Yeah, like and the other part, she also has a good comedic background as well. Like she knows how to play into what this is, so she could definitely up what up the material to what it should be for this, because that's really down to the point on this script is that um it's a lot of like two or three handers, like three four
Hmm.
characters kind of bickering back and forth, but there's not a whole lot going on to it. I mean, we don't get into some real conflict, like real conflict, until they go to the beach and we find out that Brooks is making out with like a 22-year-old chick, and Ezra discovers this and then starts a fight with Brooks.
And
And
this was the most convoluted, because this is the most like comedic setup. Not so much that he sees him Brooks like making out with this girl and starts to fight him. Just like the chase. This leads to a chase.
a chase that we've seen
Brooks,
in a dozen of movies of this type.
yeah, Brooks leaves the bar and starts just like sprinting down the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Ezra then tails him, and that behind them are Stella and Harper.
Right.
So and this is you can just see it in your head because we've seen this a million times, like you said. And then we cut to Marcy and Isaac sitting on their beach house like porch, and they're seeing like this commotion all the way down the beach, and they're like, "What is that?" And then, is that Brooks? What's is that Ezra? And then they, proceed to sprint all the way down till Brooks gets to the house, runs into the house. Ezra's chasing him, and Ezra's like, he cheated on Stella. It was
Yeah.
like, it was such a like out of no like if they want to keep going with that, they need to make it more comedic for that to be for because it's a zany chase.
It's a zany chase. There's even like the kitchen island, and they're on either side of it, going back and
Yeah.
forth, and they're throwing plastic food at each other, which I thought was. I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
can't name how many times I've seen this situation, whether it's in a Hallmark movie, a sitcom, or a drama film with like Hugh Grant or something. And then we find out the twist is that well, Brooks and Stella are in an open marriage, and
Yeah.
uh, and this was all Stella's idea, of course, because of course it was.
All right, and we get this whole thing where um then Stella's trying to explain it to Marcy and Harper
And they don't get
because we
it.
because they don't get it. And Harper says something that actually is the most convoluted. Like this is supposed to be the thing that sets off the light bulb for Stella for her now, you know, aha moment
hmm
about an open marriage. If you're in an open marriage and you didn't tell anybody about it, I guess it's not that open. I was like, I'm pretty sure that people who are generally like maybe doing that kind of thing in their relationship aren't going to their parents and going, "Do you know that my like your daughter and I can bang whoever we want?"
Yeah, like the whole
Yeah,
idea of marriage and loyalty is well, I
yeah,
don't even know
I
why we
don't.
did it. I don't even know why we got you
Yeah,
to spend all that money on the party and the ceremony because
but it's such to me that came off as kind of such a Hollywood mindset. Like if
yeah.
even if you and your partner have maybe in the 21st century agreed to do that kind of thing, I don't think you're going to your family and announcing it. Like that wasn't like some weird thing like why didn't you tell your family you're doing that? Like no, people
No,
wouldn't
I
do
mean,
that.
I can see a really good sketch where it's the engagement party and both the both of the parents of the prospective bride and groom are there, and then the bride and groom say, "Yeah, we're so happy you decided to get married, but we're going to have an open marriage." And I could see the father of the bride saying, "I'm not paying for that," because like that's
Yeah.
the whole idea is that marriage is about dedicating to that one person, and what's the point in getting married if you're not going to be with that one person? There's a
This
set of jokes there. Yeah.
yeah, this does lead to what I think is the best written scene between Brooks and Stella. And that's not saying a lot, but
hmm
this is the one where it's actually I think the best written, which is their confrontation to each other after this fight. Brooks is now she goes back to their room and Brooks is packing up to leave. And she's like and this they go through a whole back and forth where Brooks basically says, I never wanted that and you didn't listen to me. You didn't want to listen to me ever. And she was like, "Well, this is your fault. I didn't tell you to just start making out with girls at like while we are on the family vacation." And he had done that because he was effectively what it insinuated to me at least was that he never actually went with other women and she went and had relations with other men and that he only did it because he felt like that was the only way he would be able to stay married to her because she had brought it up first.
Right.
And it was a very honest like it came off. I mean, if they were the stars, the main characters of the movie, this would be an honest like this is the kind of conversation they should be having in the movie to have that honest moment.
hmm
And she didn't, and it was interesting because it came off as very authentic in the fact that, given her character, very alpha, very this, didn't even register that he would have said that just to stay with her, and that it wasn't something he was really cool with. And so he leaves, and this is the first time, at least the impression that this is the first time in perhaps a very long time that he had shown any kind of backbone to her, and it completely threw her for a loop.
Yes, and it actually kind of like breaks down the facade of her alphaness of
Yeah.
sorts.
Which is why it's the best written scene
hmm
because that is like for those type of characters that's exactly the kind of conflict that should be resulting from their personalities.
Oh yeah, and it also shows a little bit of clever depth, which is that her attitude um, It's only exists because she has Brooks to support it and
Yep.
reinforce it. And because this is the first time he pushed back, you can see how fragile that presentation actually has become.
Yes,
And
that's what we call codependency,
yes,
where he has to her behavior is being enabled by her. I mean by him, and he doesn't like her behavior, but he continues to enable it until the point where the enabler says no, I'm out. And it's a very interesting time we live in where not to be political as a tangent, but there is a certain segment of politics and things going on where what we would used to call enabling behavior in psychology has now been relabeled affirming behavior, but they're the same exact thing.
yes,
And there is something where people suddenly pretend that for for 100 years we didn't tell you that enabling was probably bad for people because enabling is reinforcing bad choices and leading to bad decisions. And now we're as a population being forced to try to quote unquote affirm or enable things. Anyway, so but enabling this is a good example of why enabling behavior is ends up being toxic for both parties
yes,
because it pushes people into behaviors that aren't really good for them. And then the person who didn't really want that to happen, who felt like they had to do it or they would lose somebody, ends up feeling just eaten alive from the inside.
oh yeah, and this kind of stirs up an action where Stella kind of tries to take off, like because Brooks has gone off to do his own thing, and Stella kind of tries to take off as well, and Ezra goes after her, and they try to have like a heart to heart, and it like that scene between the two of them afterwards just didn't really land as well as the scene we saw with Brooks and Stella.
No, and that's the problem with the Stella and Brooks storyline. We have one really great scene, and
Yeah.
then the stuff after just hits so flat for what we just got. I would almost forgive all the stuff leading up to it because that conflict in that scene felt so real.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the part with Ezra with Stella and her falling apart, and the remaining bits with Stella and Brooks just don't fit the vibe and don't fit right. But you know that's where I'm at. That could have rescued it. Like that scene, if it had continued with that level of dialogue and kind of genuineness, could have sort of rescued their character and their storyline. But we don't get that. We kind of just get we kind of get a cookie cutter remaining bit for them. And the Ezra and Stella never come off right as siblings. Their conversations, whenever it's just the two of them talking,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work. Going all the way back to the beginning where they were at the bar and she was like his wingman dude, bro, to
Yeah.
even this kind of conversation, it's not like Ezra and Harper have a good dynamic with their on the page. Isaac and Marcy have good dynamic. You I would even say that like Harper and her interactions individually with people comes off all right.
Yeah.
But the two that don't ever work, even more than Brooks and Stella, is Ezra and Stella as siblings.
And the common factor being is that I think that has to do with Stella's alpha attitude is defined superficially, I think, and that's why.
Yeah, so after it was so Brooks leaves, we have this conversation with Ezra and Stella. Ezra is trying to make heads or tails of all of the stuff that seems to have happened.
And he gets a like, and then his dad kind of shouts at him and then tells him his apology, and Ezra doesn't respond back in kind. And that following morning, Ezra goes out for his morning jog, and then
I
as
will
he's
say, I think it is
yeah
important that before he goes out for the morning jog, like after that part where he goes up, we have another tender moment with Harper and Ezra just reinforcing their genuine affection for each other.
yeah
And this is where we do get, I think, which is a good line. You can like me, but you can't love me.
yeah
Which again, this goes back to something like Sweet November with Charlie Theron, like the terminally ill, like superstar girl of the movie. Like she knows that there's no future for them, so she's trying to make some kind of artificial barrier that just emotionally. Whenever somebody in a movie is like, "You can't fall in love with me," you know exactly they're gonna fall in love.
Yes.
I do, and I do think that's an important moment because when Ezra does go out on the jog, we get back and we just see this ambulance at the house,
And
and
we don't know. Well,
we don't know what's
we
going
know,
on.
but
Like,
we're not going to tell
yeah,
you because we have to
yeah,
cut it off here. Um, who that ambulance is for? Because we do know that Harper's terminally ill, but we also know that Isaac has been getting death threats, and he's recently
yeah.
released in docs. So what happened? You'll have to go read the script and find out. So yeah, let's take a look. Let's take a look at like the overall part. Little Chad, do you think is this a green light or a pass for you?
I would. This is kind of weird to give a caveat. If any casting got attached to it, I could greenlight it. But as it is just on the page, if it was just the script, I would pass on it. If there was like, if somebody came to me and said, "Here's the script, so and so, so and so, and so and so are attached," and I actually liked the cast specifically for Harper and Isaac and Marcy, like I would want to see, I would want actually Harper and Marcy. I would need Harper and Marcy. I
Mm-hmm.
could fill out around them as long as I felt like those two were good people. Like for instance, if I found out like, oh, Sydney Sweeney's production company has picked it up, I would say nope, pass, because I don't buy Sydney Sweeney being able to pull off what Harper needs to pull off.
Right.
She's a beautiful girl. She can do a lot of things, but she's not right for this kind of role.
Exactly.
If you
And she's
told
not
me
Stella
like
either. That's the other part. Like,
I could see somebody like who was it from Mad Max Fury Road, Anna Taylor-Joy.
Anna Taylor-Joy. Yeah.
Anna Taylor-Joy on the other hand, I would say would be a good Harper. Like you tell me Anna Taylor-Joy's attached, I would go to Netflix and try to get some money and say green light. Because I think she's the kind of person who, has some range as an actress,
Mm-hmm.
has like an interesting look that fits that kind of thing, and would be good. Like you come to me and be like, Sigourney Weaver and Anna Taylor-Joy are in as Marcy, and I was like, let's do this. Let's get this done. I can sell the shit out of this movie. So it's a casting dependent, but as just a script, I would pass.
Yes, I'm in the same boat primarily because like the subplot of Stella and Brooks is too weak, and Harper and Ezra is barely sustainable, and the most interesting characters don't have the whole lot of screen time, and that's Marcy and Isaac. And I'd rather, I mean, basing on what it is, it's just not up to snuff for me. I would say it's a reluctant
Mm.
pass as well. Because I mean, it comes down to a lesson that I espouse on this channel and on my Patreon frequently, which is you always want to make your movie about the most interesting characters you have in your toy chest. And Ezra is not that interesting. Harper is interesting. Marcy is interesting. Isaac is
Isaac
interesting.
is interesting. Yeah,
Stella
that's
and Ezra and Brooks, they're not interesting. And the other part too is structurally speaking, like this feels like a lot of the same type of scripts. This type of story feels very familiar. There's
I
nothing
would
really new brought to it.
I could see myself greenlighting faster if they redid this and if they did a whole new pass on the script. Cut out, and this is going to sound weird because since I just said I like me and we both agreed Harper was a good character. Cut out all the kids. Make this about Isaac and Marcy,
Hmm.
and just do it as the weekend of him coming home from prison, where you're just having them unpack all of the baggage of what he did, what it means for their relationship, that they're really in love, but there's this giant,
They've lost 18
elephant,
months. Yeah.
lost 18 months, the elephant in the room about what Isaac did and how it impacted. Like maybe she has to cook herself because of him. No one will work for her. No one. Like she's toxic. Like as no one's going to work for their household, because of what he did. No one will let her into parties. Society shuns them.
Mm-hmm.
But they own the house. The house is owned outright. They have money, so they're still there. Like, I would think that would be a really interesting thing. It would be, and it's very rare that we get a lot of stuff that showcases older talent.
Yeah.
And so something like this, especially I would say it on a streaming service, Netflix, Amazon, Paramount Plus.
Yep.
You do you could do this as a movie. You get somebody, like I said, get a Sigourney Weaver, and then like, I think you mentioned in our pre-show, a Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Those two would be the kind of couple where you could see that they still would be romantically interested. I think because they're still attractive for their age, that it wouldn't be off-putting to have younger people to watch either. But you could unpack so much and get milk so much drama out of this, I guess bottle episode, so to speak, where it's just in the house over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that would be super interesting.
That really would be, because I liked those characters a lot. And so, okay, we've got, sadly, a double pass, but not in a painful, this is what the heck did we read type of thing. Just more like, a little bit on shortcomings. Over on the Patreon side, the patrons got to vote if they had greenlight or pass this. And the ones that did vote voted overwhelmingly yes to greenlight this. So I guess this has, I guess something of this script hits them where it needs to be hit, because
It's Harper, man. Harper is a fun character that comes off really, she comes off really well on the page. She's the kind of character I liked reading her lines, her dialogue. I think Harper sells it.
I think that's
one
of the selling points to it. That, Marcy, and Isaac, those three kind of sell it. And then over into the chat for people that are watching live or if you're watching on the replay, we got a generous super sticker from the Dead Man of a poop emoji. Thank you, the Dead Man, for that. Greatly appreciated, but not required. But as always, we really do like that support here. With that being said, Lil Chad, where can our wonderful audience find you when not visiting this show?
Yeah, when not hanging out here with Script talking about movies. I'm co-host of the Ascendant Art podcast. You can find it on YouTube, Rumble, all the places. Just search for Ascendant Art. We do our show Friday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's a fun hangout. We're to the end of the week. We usually try to take on either new stuff that hasn't been covered by the end of the week, or if we do cover things that other people have covered from Monday through Friday, we try to do it in a different way, because by the end of the week, some horses have been quite well beaten beyond their death. And so we like to try to make sure we're doing something interesting, so that you're not hearing the same stuff for the 30th time.
Yeah.
Which is appreciated. This week we reviewed, this week we reviewed Mobland episode 1. And I can't believe that show hasn't hit harder, because it's really good. Guy Ritchie show on Paramount Plus.
That's Helen Mirren and Pierce Brosnan as well.
And with Tom Hardy.
Oh,
the cast is fantastic.
Right.
Paddy Considine is in there. Like, he's just a supporting actor. Like, they got everybody, and it's good stuff. So we're gonna start covering that weekly, because it's a weekly drop, and I'm thinking that other channels will probably pick up on it as well soon, because it is that good. But we're doing it now, so we're the early adopters.
Awesome. All right. Go check that stuff out. Guys, I want to thank all of you out there for joining us again this week. We'll be back next week with another screenplay. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.